On this journey of inheritance, we have seen both the tribes of the eastern side of the Jordan River and those that dwelt on the west side, of course, being the land of Canaan, the promised land. We saw the borders being drawn, and we saw the land being distributed. We saw the lots being selected in front of the tabernacle by God's direction, where the people of Israel settled. But what about the tribe of Levi, the tribe that was not to inherit land? They were to inherit cities, and we're going to see that in today's chapter. The book of Joshua, 21:1.
Then the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites came to Eleazar the priest and Joshua son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers' houses of the Israelite tribes.
So we have all the different representatives of the different aspects gathered together here. We have Eleazar, the high priest, the representative of the Lord. We have Joshua, son of Nun, who is the leader of the Israelites at this current juncture in time, the replacement of Moses. We have the leaders of the different tribes. This is a big and important event, so all hands need to be aboard. The book of Joshua.
21:2. They said to them at Shiloh in Canaan, the Lord commanded through Moses that we should be given cities to dwell in with their pasture land, suburbs for our cattle.
So we have seen this numerous times up to this point. The tribe of Levi was not to receive land like the other tribes, but they were to have cities to dwell in. They were also the ones to look after the cities of refuge, the place to go in the event of an unintentional slaying of a man, what we would refer to as manslaughter. We looked at that in the previous chapter. So it's time for that distribution. And we have all the different representatives of all these different tribes here because they need to, in essence, donate these cities to the Levites so the Levites can have possession of them. They have the land and the cities are on the land, so they need to give those cities to the tribe of Levi. And these cities, they're going to be on both the east and the western side of the land, and there's going to be cities of refuge all over the place so that they will be available for people so they do not face the judgment unfairly when it comes to the death of an individual. The book of Joshua.
21:3. So the Israelites gave to the Levites out of their own inheritance at the command of the Lord these cities and their suburbs.
21:4. The first lot came out for the families of the Kohathites. So those Levites who were descendants of Aaron the priest received by lot from the tribes of Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin, 13 cities. So Levi the person had 3 sons, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. So due to this, there is essentially 3 different sub-tribes of the tribe of Levi. And previously, when we were looking at the tabernacle and the division of duty and what roles the different Levites would have to do, it was all divided up based on which of the sub-tribe they were from or which son they were descended of. Moses, Aaron, and Miriam are siblings, and they are descended from a man named Amram, who was a descendant of Kohath. Aaron, of course, was the first high priest, and Eleazar was his son. So our first grouping of cities is going to the Kohathites and the descendants of Aaron. Now, it should be noted that the Levites are considered the priestly tribe, but not every Levi is a priest. To be a priest, they have to be a descendant of Aaron. It is a heretical priesthood, and those of the tribe of Levi that are not in the priesthood still work to support and help with the operation of the tabernacle, and later on we'll see them doing different work with the temple and stuff as well. So they're not idle or anything. They do have their own job to do. It's just more of a supporting role, whereas the priesthood is more of a direct role. The book of Joshua. 21:5. And the rest of the Kohathites received by lot from the families of the tribes of Ephraim, Dan, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, 10 cities. So there are a couple of things going on here. First, we have the ordering. We have it starting with the priesthood, then going to the Kohathites, and this ordering, as we make our progression through this, is the same ordering that we saw previously when it came to the tabernacle. We had the priest's responsibility, then the Kohathites, then the Gershonites and the Marianites. They all had different roles and different responsibilities, and we almost see an echo of that when it comes to the distribution of the cities. Or maybe it's simply a reference too. I guess they didn't want to go through the names alphabetically. But interesting enough, they didn't go by birth order either. For Gershon is the oldest, then Kohath, then Merari. So that's kind of interesting. It's really interesting to think about birth order, because typically in that culture, the firstborn was the one to receive all the inheritance, and the second son and thereafter would receive far less. But we have seen many instances from Abraham on where the younger son was the one to receive the inheritance or the position of authority. Even when it comes to Moses, Aaron was Moses' older brother. So that's kind of interesting. And perhaps because Kohath was the one that was in the lineage of Moses and Aaron, perhaps that's why they were mentioned first. Then the order loops back to Gershon, and then Merari was the youngest, of course. So anyway, we are seeing these different tribes, the tribes of Israel, giving cities in groups to the descendants of Levi. And we have a quantitative amount for these different tribes and how many cities they ended up giving them. And previously, of course, we saw where all these tribes were settled, and we're seeing that it's going to split up the Levites throughout the nation of Israel on both sides of the river by them having cities all over the place. Also proportional to the amount of inheritance that they receive as well. So the tribes that were bigger and received more territory and received more cities gave more cities to the Levites. Anyway, let's continue. The book of Joshua. 21:6. The Gershonites received by lot from the families of the tribes of Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and the half-tribe of Manasseh in Bashan, 13 cities. 21:7. The Meratites received according to their families from the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Zebulun, 12 cities. 21:8. The Israelites gave by lot to the Levites those cities with their pasture lands, suburbs, as the Lord commanded through Moses. 21:9. They gave from the tribes of Judah and Simeon and the cities here mentioned by name. 21:10. Which went to the families of the descendants of Aaron of the Kohathite branch of the Levites, for the lot fell to them first. So now we have a deeper insight into how all of this happened. They drew lots. Now this was either they had the piece of territory and then they drew lots to see who would take possession of it, or the reverse where they drew lots and then selected the portion of land and then they went and dwelt on it. So it would work either way. In either case or in either instance, I think it would probably be more likely that they picked the land and then they drew lots for the land and then the Lord would be able to select who took possession of it. He could make it work either way. He's quite powerful. So now we're going to see the names of some of these cities that they received as their inheritance. The book of Joshua. 21:11. They gave them the city of Kiriath Araba, Araba being the father of Anak, which city is Hebron, in the hill country of Judah, with its pasture land round about it. 21:12. But the cities, field, and villages they gave to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, as his own. So the first city that we're starting with is one that is special. So we have the Kiriath Araba, which we have seen mentioned numerous times recently. And we know that it was originally in the possession of the descendants of Anak, and they were giants, or they were the Anakim, which are similar to the Raphaim. They were giants in the land, and Caleb had a special right to this land or this territory. So they're going to take the city, but the fields and the villages around there, Caleb took possession of them. It was his inheritance for being faithful to the Lord. He was one of only two that when they scouted out the land 40 years before this, well, I guess it would be more than 40 years before this, that said that the land was good and that they should go in there and take possession of it. And he was faithful to the Lord, and his faith was being rewarded here. The book of Joshua. 21:13. Thus the descendants of Aaron the priest, they gave Hebron, the city of refuge for the slayer, with its pasture lands, suburbs, and together with their suburbs, Libnah. So we have Hebron here being established as a city of refuge, and we also see mention of the city of Libnah, which is going to show up in future books. It's a very interesting place. A lot of stuff happens there, but we'll get to that when we get to that. And this is the pattern that we are going to see. They're going to name a bunch of cities, and then it's going to point out which ones are the cities of refuge and which tribe gave which cities. So let us continue on. The book of Joshua. 21:14. Jatir, Eshtemoa. 21:15. Holon, Debir. 21:16. Ain, Jetua, and Beth Shemesh, 9 cities, each with its suburbs, out of those 2 tribes. 21:17. Out of the tribe of Benjamin, Gibeon, Geba. 21:18. Anaroth and Almon, 4 cities, each with its suburbs. 21:19. The cities of the sons of Aaron, the priest, were 13, with their suburbs. So the thing with these cities here is that they didn't necessarily have the population to fill all of them to the brim. They had this land as an inheritance that was something that they could grow to fill. Israel is certainly becoming a great and mighty nation, but as far as the descendants of Aaron goes, they're relatively small in number. Yeah, there's going to be people that are going to be dwelling in their city as well, and you probably got livestock and children and whatnot. It increases the numbers a little bit, but it is room for them to grow for later on, especially with the role of the priesthood later on and all the things that they're going to need to look after. So God gave them room to grow in the promised land. The book of Joshua. 21:20. The rest of the Kohathites belonging to the Levitical families were allotted cities out of the tribe of Ephraim. 21:21. To them were given, each with its pasture land suburbs, Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim, as the city of refuge for the slayer, and Gezer. 21:22. And Kibzaim and Beth Horon, 4 cities, each with its pasture lands, suburbs. 21:23. And out of the tribe of Dan, each with its pasture lands, suburbs, Eltekah, Gibbethan. 21:24. Aijalon and Gath Rimmon, 4 cities, each with its pasture lands, suburbs. 21:25. And out of the half tribe of Manasseh, Tanakh and another Gath Rimmon, 2 cities, each with its pasture lands. So we have 2 places with the same name. Not exactly uncommon. We see that quite often today, especially when you look at Europe and then the Americas. There's so many places in America that are named after places in Europe. It's a quite common thing to do, and sometimes these names translated into their local language mean something like the city or the place or something, so the names aren't necessarily all that creative, but that's just how it is sometimes. So we're going to continue on. There's quite a few more cities to go. The book of Joshua. 21:26. All the cities for the families of the remaining Kohathites were 10, with their pasture lands, suburbs. 21:27. And to the Gershonites of the families of the Levites, they gave out of the other half tribe of Manasseh the city of Golan in Bashan as the city of refuge for the slayer, and Beeshtera, 2 cities, each with its pasture lands. 21:28. Out of the tribe of Issachar, Kishon, Daberath. 21:29. Gadarmuth and En-Ganim, 4 cities, each with its suburbs. 21:30. Out of the tribe of Asher, Mishael, Abdon. 21:31. Helkath and Rehob, 4 cities, each with its pasture lands. 21:31. And out of the tribe of Naphtali, Kadesh in Gilead, city of refuge for the slayer, and Hamath Dor and Kathan, 3 cities, each with its suburbs. 21:33. And the cities of the Gershonite families were 13, with their pasture land suburbs. 21:34. And to the families of the Merathites, the rest of the Levites out of the tribe of Zebulun were given Jokneam, Karta. 21:35. Dinah and Nahalal, 4 cities, each with its pasture lands suburbs. 21:36. And out of the tribe of Reuben, Bezer, Jahaz. 21:37. Kedemoth and Mahath, 4 cities, each with its pasture lands suburbs. 21:38. And out of the tribe of Gad, Ramoth in Gilead, as the city of refuge for the slayer, and Mahanaim. 21:39. Heshbon and Jazer, 4 cities in all, each with its pasture lands suburbs. 21:40. So all the cities allotted to the Merarite families, that is, the remainder of the Levite families, were 12 cities. Well, that certainly is a list of names of cities. And we're going to see some of these show up in other places. And when they do, we can look them up in the book of Joshua. And that's pretty cool, I guess. Let's continue. The book of Joshua. 21:41. The cities of the Levites in the midst of the possession of the Israelites were 48 cities in all, with their pasture lands suburbs. So we saw 48 cities here being listed, and this is the same amount that the Lord told Moses way back in the Torah. So this is a fulfillment of that portion or promise that was given to Moses. The book of Joshua. 21:42. These cities all had their pasture lands, suburbs around them. So all of the other tribes of Israel, they received rather large amounts of land for their inheritance. So they'd be able to plant things and have animals and do whatever. And they'd be able to be very prosperous from that large amount of animals and agriculture. The Levites were very limited on what they could do. They only received 2,000 cubits around the city, so they could plant things and they could look after their herds, but they couldn't have wealth in the same way as the other Israelites. It was enough to sustain them and it was enough to look after them, but they still had to interact with everybody else, and they had to be a part of society. They were not separated. And when we look at the different offerings that are made to the Lord, we see the Levites receiving a portion, and that also helped them out as well. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on here. The book of Joshua. 21:43. And the Lord gave to Israel all the land which he had sworn to give their fathers, and they possessed it and dwelt in it. So the Lord has fulfilled his part of the covenant between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then to the Israelites, that he would give them this land. And he has brought them out of Egypt into this land for them to have as a possession. And they are in there and they are taking possession. There's still enemies in the land. They don't have the entirety of what God has given them. But the Lord has done his part and has fulfilled that aspect of the covenant. The Israelites still need to drive out their enemies if they want to have the entirety of it, but this is where they are now anyway. It's not a contradiction or anything. The Lord has brought them there and they do have possession. The book of Joshua. 21:44. The Lord gave them rest round about, just as he had sworn to their fathers. Not one of all their enemies withstood them. The Lord delivered all their enemies into their hands. So the Israelites have been on quite the journey from being slaves in Egypt to the Exodus to the wilderness wandering, and now this new generation is taking possession of the land. And they have been granted great military victories over their enemies and have been able to take very large areas of land as a possession. So Joshua has been an incredibly successful military leader. He has been obedient to the Lord, and the Lord has guided him to great military victories, almost as if he was physically invulnerable to harm or damage, and they just beat everybody back. But Joshua is getting old and getting tired and getting to the end of his life. If he could continue on, they could probably subjugate every last portion of the land, but it is not going to be the case that happens. They have taken possession of a lot, but now it is no longer the time of war, but the time of rest and reprieve. I suppose the thing is, too, that when it comes to enemies, that when they're all wiped out, there's always new ones that pop up. So perhaps it's always going to be the case that it is impossible to truly take possession of the land in all of its entirety simultaneously. We'll see what happens next. The book of Joshua. 21:45. They failed no part of any good thing which the Lord had promised to the house of Israel. All came to pass. So the covenant has been fulfilled. Israel has possession of the land. This was the promise made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So this is complete.